good afternoon, good evening, good morning, no matter where you are in the world. I would love to welcome you to our anti-racism speaker series session. We are in February, so this has officially been going on for a year and a half now, and so excited to welcome our guest, which we'll tell you about in a few minutes. My name is Dr. Carrie Ewert. I am a faculty member with the Master of Educational Technology program, as well as the coordinator for equity, diversity, and inclusion, as well as community outreach. And then I also am a coordinator for the 20th anniversary for MET. And my partner in crime is Dr. Samia Khan, who will be here shortly, and she is former MET director and a faculty member in curriculum and pedagogy through the sciences. And we're so happy that people could join us today. I would like to honor and acknowledge, as an uninvited settler and a non-Indigenous person, I would like to acknowledge and recognize that I work and teach, and we meet here today on UBC's lens on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh Nation. And I acknowledge our traditional hosts and honor their welcome and graciousness, particularly to peoples who seek knowledge here, which is myself. And I am consistently unlearning and learning and really looking to be an ally within this entire journey of truth and reconciliation. And so much has come in terms of, I guess, backlash and really uncharted territories and times in the past through education of this vicious and vindictive past. So what we do now is we look to honor the lands now and really look to see what we can do to move past and to become allies in the truth and reconciliation process, acknowledging the fact that my profession has profound roots in the need for decolonizing this practice against this colonial violence, and acknowledging my responsibility as the coordinator for EDI and community outreach, as well as with graduate studies, that we want to engage in this ongoing process of disrupting these Eurocentric and hegemonic and colonial norms to move past these systems of structure and demonstrate the values of decolonization. And we do that here today. So I thank everybody for joining us. Now, just briefly, I would like to mention that MET, for those people who are not aware, is a graduate studies program in the Faculty of Education at UBC, and it educates professionals in all sectors on the use and impact of digital learning and educational technology. Now, the reason and purpose for us having this speaker series is to acknowledge the commitment that every individual has to inclusivity and to addressing their systemic racism. Now, with the focus being on anti-Indigenous, anti-Black, anti-people of color racism, this series seeks to identify the responsibilities that educators and leaders have to facilitating and supporting the anti-racist approaches and strategies for truth, redress, and reconciliation within their practice to enhance and transform learning environments and learning cultures. And so we have a call to action, and within this call to action, we thank very much so Edith Lando for supporting this call. And we are going to talk about this at the end of the session, but it is more taking the content from Dr. Jeong, who is going to be presenting today, and moving it past that talk and moving it into action, thinking about conversations that you have, lesson plans that you can make, workshops that you can create, and how you might extend and enhance the work that's being done. So with that said, I am going to stop sharing my screen and would love to introduce our speaker for today. We have with us today, it is my great pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Jeong, who comes to us as a visiting scholar from South Korea, where she is a professor of media education at the Department of Korean Education and Master's Program in Digital Media Education. And Jeong, in National University, I hope I said that well, of Education. Now, Dr. Jeong is a partner investigator of the Australian Research Council Centre of Excellence for Digital Child. And Dr. Jeong is currently working in HDLC, the Human Development, Learning and Culture in the Faculty of Education at the University of British Columbia. And we are so honored to have her here with us today. Dr. Jeong's research and practices have focused on children's multiliteracy practices, classroom discourse analysis, critical understanding of literacy education and remote schooling, classroom resources developed for media education, and digital parenting. So she has recently contributed chapters to the Routledge Handbook of Media Education Futures Post-Pandemic, Learning to Live with Datification and Learning Beyond the School. And she is currently writing a book together with researchers in 7 different countries about parents and caregivers experiencing on parenting during COVID-19 pandemic, focusing on the children's digital media use and remote schooling. Dr. Jeong is presenting on the topic entitled Children Learning to Read Digital Data as Text, a case study of critical algorithmic education, and something I know for our MET students, we can very much use within our own practice. So welcome, Dr. Jeong. It is such an honor to have you here and have you joining us here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie, and good afternoon, everyone. It's my great honor and pleasure to be able to speak in the anti-racism speaker series today. And first of all, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the co-hosts of this seminar, Dr. Carrie Ewart and Dr. Samia Khan, who have prepared for this seminar together. Today, I'm going to share with you my recent research on critical algorithm literacy education for children. This talk is based on a chapter that I wrote with 2 of my colleagues for the book, which came out last year. And you can find this book in the UBC library. The research was conducted as a response to the pedagogical challenge faced by media educators on how to unravel the hidden algorithmic practices in classroom settings. For you to understand the context of South Korean teenagers' digital media use, I would like to show you some recent statistics. The recent survey by the Korea Press Foundation shows that the internet usage time of teenagers increased rapidly. Average internet usage time per day increased from 4 hours and 30 minutes in 2019 to 8 hours in 2020. In terms of the media use of the past week, almost all teenagers have been using mobile internet, television, online video platforms, internet portals, and messenger services, and 8 out of 10 people have used PC internet, game platforms, OTT services, SNS, music streaming services. And 5 out of 10 young people are using AI speakers, game consoles, and metaverse platforms, and 4 out of 10 are using virtual reality devices. With a rapid increase in the use of personalized digital media devices and social media worldwide, digital platforms have used algorithms to create segmented audiences from personal data. South Korea is no exception to the growing influence of digital platforms and their algorithmic power. YouTube is where South Koreans spend the most time. As you can see in the table, YouTube was the most used video platforms by teenagers, followed by YouTube Shorts and Instagram Reels. How South Korean teenagers would choose the content on YouTube. The survey shows that YouTube recommendation, that's 71.6%, and search 71.3% are found to be similarly high as the methods mainly used when young people select YouTube content. About 50% of teens responded that they mainly choose videos through channel subscriptions. 10% of teenagers said they get to watch through automatic playback. How similar do you think this would be to the Canadian young people's experiences? Considering how young people are using the digital media, including YouTube, do you think critical understanding of algorithms is important, and why? To answer this question, I would like to share a news article published last year in South Korea. I just quickly Google translated that page in the slide. The title says, "Why do you see pictures of women when you search for likes and dislikes?" Considering that these words are supposed to be gender neutral. The article suggests that the Political Mothers Media Monitor team in South Korea found out that when you search for the words such as street, ordinary person, Western, and girl in Korean on portal sites such as Google, Naver, and Daum, the domestic ones, you would be exposed to sensational images that highlight specific parts of female body or photos that are presumed to have been taken without the person's permission appear in the search results. And children and adolescents are exposed to these sexual images without adult certification. An activist in this group said, "My child asked me of a meaning of a word, so we searched together on the internet, and I was surprised to see sexual images that were supposed to have nothing to do with the meaning of the word. I thought that the internet environment could be dangerously biased." This article reports that when you searched the word street women rather than street scenery or street food came out as the preferred search terms. When you searched the word Western women appeared as the preferred words rather than Western cultures or Western countries. Then should we ask why we got these results? Internet industry insiders and researchers such as Joy Lam-Winnie have raised issues with the algorithmic bias as the reason. Algorithmic bias is just like human bias and results in unfairness in the human ways of thinking and social realities. The reason why the search word street prioritized the words street women was that the internet had been used to share images of women sexually objectified. The search results reflect the algorithmic bias reflected on the internet. Therefore, it is important to address the issues of algorithmic bias in society, and it is also very important to address the issue of algorithmic bias pedagogically in the classroom with children who are growing up in the algorithmic environment. But how we could do that? Belgian and South Korean researchers and practitioners closely collaborated for 2 years to develop a critical algorithmic literacy education program. The Korean educational program was inspired by the Belgian educational game, which was aimed for high school teenagers to create an algorithm that would most appeal to the YouTube CEO. Students were provided with raw data on YouTube users as well as videos and were asked to analyze the data set. The South Korean program was designed for upper elementary students. considering that the age of children using digital platforms such as YouTube is becoming lower, and most upper elementary students are users of smartphones and YouTube. In adapting the Belgian game, we tried to create a program simple enough for those students to grasp how recommendation algorithms of digital platforms might work. The newly developed critical algorithm literacy program provided learners with an opportunity to think as YouTube engineers by following the guidance of the teacher, by exploring datasets of an imaginary YouTube user, and recommending lists of videos to the user. In South Korean elementary schools, 5th and 6th graders aged 10 to 12 learn computer programming in the practical course curriculum, mainly focusing on the algorithm as a way of procedural thinking to solve given problems. Students might learn where and how software might be used in daily lives, why software might be significant, and have hands-on programming experiences. Finally, children have experience creating a simple program like game using block-based programming languages such as MIT Media Lab Scratch or Naver Connect Foundation's entry. As the course underscores technical aspects of algorithm, it is hardly related to critical understanding of algorithms. Datafication is a term coined by Kenneth Fouquier, editor of The Economist, and Victor Meyer-Schoenberger, professor at the Oxford Internet Institute, meaning taking all aspects of life and turning them into data. The production of such data is inextricably linked with the elements of data extraction, such as data collection, processing, refinement, and value creation, such as revenue generation, data monitoring, state monitoring, and citizen participation from the extracted data. Media literacy education aims to help students critically reflect on the use of media and understand the role and influence of media technology in their lives. With the rapid increase in the use of personalized digital media devices and social media, user data produced by individuals have contributed to creating algorithms aiming to personalize the content on digital platforms. Therefore, a critical understanding of digital technology in media literacy education needs to be extended to recommendation algorithms to examine the designer's social cultural values and economic intentions. We were inspired by Gray and the colleagues' concept of data infrastructure literacy and Van Dijk's platformization tree metaphor. Gray and the colleagues point out the limitations of existing data literacy education centered on numerical skills and propose data infrastructure literacy as an alternative. According to them, data infrastructures are shifting relations of databases, software, standards, classification systems, procedures, committees, processes, coordinates, user interface components, and many other elements which are involved in the making and use of data. Considering this definition, data infrastructure literacy refers to the ability to critically explore the relationship between objects and non-objects involved in producing and using data. The critical algorithm literacy program helps to conceptualize the data infrastructure by letting students think about the relationship between objects and non-objects, such as criteria, weights, developers, subscribers, viewing time, keywords, and thumbnails, all of which have tended to be thought about in fragments. Van Dijk proposes the platformatization tree, a visual metaphor to imagine holistic governance for platform companies. In this metaphor, the trunk signifies platform companies or intermediaries such as Facebook and Google, and the root indicates the hardware foundation that allows such companies to be embedded. Branch denotes sectoral applications offered or mediated by platform companies. And lastly, oxygen refers to the essential ingredient fed into applications to function and grow. As one of the most familiar applications to children, YouTube functions as a heuristic tool to ponder the intertwining relationships among hardware, platform, application, and data. The critical algorithm literacy program was designed for young children to view YouTube as a venue to watch videos and a complex ecosystem consisting of various technical and social components. So in adapting the Belgian game, the priority was making the program simple enough that upper elementary students could participate. Having students take the role of an engineer remains central to the adapted version. However, it seemed difficult for younger children to create an algorithm based on data analysis. Considering the level of mathematical competency of upper elementary students, drawing the criteria for recommending videos and creating a formula by weighting the criteria was also tricky. Therefore, it was decided that the South Korean version would focus on ranking the order of the videos to recommend to possible users by placing video cards on a board and rearranging them according to the rankings based on students' criteria and then debriefing the reasons for doing so. We also decided to visualize the data in order for students to grasp elements involved in YouTube's recommendation algorithms and easily participate in the task of selecting criteria for recommendation. Therefore, we used a strategy of constructing two kinds of data sets. The first data set is a persona. Persona is a concept introduced by Alan Cooper, referring to a fictional character representing a specific group of users. The persona in the critical algorithm literacy program is a character that students may consider as their other selves. The second data set is 9 video cards with relevant information such as thumbnails, title, description, the number of views, likes, subscribers, and upload time, which could be taken as the criteria for recommendation. While the Belgian game provided the participants with 20 music videos recommended to 1 male and 1 female user respectively, only 1 fictional user and 9 video cards were presented in the critical algorithm literacy program we developed. We searched the latest popular YouTube videos and channels and asked elementary students about their preferred content to select YouTube videos for this data set. Video cards were made to provide students with information for the recommendation criteria to read the basic information presented on the card about the content and use it as criteria for a recommendation without having to play each video on a digital device. A block of 2 40-minute classes were planned, which is somewhat short, considering the context of the South Korean elementary school, where the teacher's control over the school curriculum is quite limited, and there is no regular class time dedicated to media education. The program was piloted in the after-school care classroom of the 5th grade aged 10 to 11. The program consists of relatively more structured activities that elementary school students can quickly complete. However, the teacher was advised to minimize direct intervention as much as possible so that the students could share their experiences, discuss the information presented in the given data, and select criteria that can be considered when recommending the videos. In the pilot study, 6 female and 2 male students participated. They were given 1 persona card and 9 YouTube video cards. The YouTube videos recommended for the persona Kim Min-ho included various genres. Each video card was composed of thumbnails, length, title, creator, number of views, upload time, and brief description. The language in the video included both English and Korean. The activities for the program were reading video cards, exploring persona, discussing criteria for recommendation, and ranking video cards, meeting an imaginary YouTube engineer, and reflecting on the whole activity. So this is a picture of the beginning activity of reading video cards. And in discussing the criteria for selecting videos to recommend for the persona, students showed their thoughts and reflections from various perspectives on the factors that influence their favorite YouTube content as YouTube users. Students were given information about a fictional character named Kim Min-ho. For example, his most recent search terms were online game-related terms, such as Brawl Stars strategy, Overwatch skin, and soccer-related ones, Tottenham Champion League. When deciding which content should be recommended to Min-ho, the persona, some students tended to choose content related to Min-ho's search terms, while others suggested recommending content that they, as teenagers, would prefer. In addition, in light of their YouTube viewing experience, the students carefully examined and discussed whether the length of the video was appropriate. When deciding which content to recommend to Min-ho, the persona, students suggested that 10 to 15 minutes is the appropriate amount of time to watch one clip on YouTube. They argued that if the content length is longer than 15 minutes, they tend not to watch the video clip and would skip it through. In this process, as YouTube users, we could get a glimpse into what the students judged to be the right length. Other than that, students considered whether the language of the content is in Korean or in English, and whether it is content that is not a topic of interest, but may be curious in light of the persona search terms and viewing experiences presented. After going through the previous processes, the children had the opportunity to think like an engineer who makes an algorithm for YouTube. The focus on this activity is to experience the way recommendation algorithms work on the digital platforms visited daily. Here, the critical algorithm literacy program helped students think through how data works in recommending and arranging video content. As mentioned earlier, Korean elementary school students are learning algorithms focusing on computer logic and procedural thinking. I believe that in the process of children participating in this program, the algorithm can be viewed as not just a procedure for operating the machine, but where humans give the final weight in the process of making the algorithm. And this problematize which criteria are critical. In other words, we tried to use a media education intervention to understand the importance of thinking about how to determine the weight of variables. In the process of playing the game and discussing the results, the children could see that social values are involved in determining and applying the algorithm to digital content. However, the students were confused about creating an algorithm that reflected their values, what they wanted, or creating an algorithm based on their YouTube experience. So when we apply this game in the future, it is necessary to present one of these two goals and discuss them. The critical algorithm literacy program invites students to imagine the inner workings of YouTube and its algorithm by simulating the processes of making sense of the data. Platform imaginaries are important for a critical understanding of algorithms because algorithmic practices are increasingly becoming opaque. As machine learning, as well as human intervention, affects algorithmic practices, it is becoming opaque even to developers as well as users. When the program we developed was introduced through conferences and papers, criticism was raised that the algorithmic practice in this program is quite different from the actual YouTube recommendation. However, it is difficult to grasp the algorithmic practice of the YouTube recommendation system, which is neither clearly explained to developers nor transparently disclosed to the public. An understanding of the actual algorithm does not necessarily lead to critical thinking about datafication. The purpose of this program is not to understand exactly how the YouTube algorithm works, but to help children understand the value-laden nature in which algorithms might be constructed. One of the core concepts of media literacy is that media is constructed, and thus it could be constructed in different ways. This core concept should be extended not only to content, but also to platforms such as YouTube, of which algorithms could be constructed in different ways. We need to expand platform imaginaries to include critical thinking about YouTube. Now, I'm going to wrap up with conclusion and questions. Children need to learn what kinds of data might be collected and how they could be used to construct a YouTube recommendation algorithm, and of course, other digital platforms recommendation algorithms, and recognize the rights of their data. And the pedagogy could be developed to raise awareness of critical algorithm literacy education as a new approach to media education in the age of digital platforms. So we developed one kind, but there could be more and many. So I'm going to leave you with 3 more questions I have in mind and we need to think about. Would the traditional pen and paper simulation game and activities like we utilized in this program be more useful for kids to discover how algorithms might function in digital media? Or can we develop some kind of app or digital programs for this kind of critical algorithm literacy? If that's the case, why? That's my big question. And would it be feasible or not for kids to engage in critical discourse with their teacher and peers if they were not physically present in the classroom, then why? Could we use this critical algorithm literacy pedagogy to teach students how artificial intelligence, like ChatGPT, which is a hot topic these days, may be prejudiced and value-laden by nature in a broader sense in the ever-evolving digital environment? If so, how could we do this? So thank you for listening. And now I invite you to comment and questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jeong. That was amazing. I love those questions at the end, and I'm just thinking that I can pose them in my class, as this is a very critical discussion that we're currently having in some of our MET studies. So thank you very, very much. I am at this point going to pass it along to Dr. Samia Khan, who is going to, I think, read out, Dr. Khan, the questions that were listed on Slido. If you didn't get the opportunity to ask a question, please feel free to list it in the chat area, and we can adjust it or address it at that point as well.
Thank you very much. Hopefully everyone can hear me. I'd like to begin the conversation today by taking a look at the Slido questions. And a number of great questions have been posted about your critical algorithmic literacy program and pedagogy. Dr. Jeong, I'm delighted to share our top question with you right now, which is, what are your recommendations for educators who might not have the experience in program creation that you discuss? Is there a way to address algorithmic bias in other ways?
Okay, that's a great question. And actually, the program we developed, we had a workshop with media educators who had none of the experiences of programming themselves. And because we just used simple persona card and YouTube video cards, and if they had an experience as a user of YouTube content and platforms, and then they can, based on their own experiences as users, and then they can do this program. And so I want to just say that this program was not about making a programming, and it was about reflecting and ask questions why this kind of content would be exposed to me. And so think like a kind of like bookshelves in the library or like in the bookshop, and then somebody recommended and selected and curated those books for us to read. And then we could ask why these books are here, and why the other books are not be here, and what kind of criteria would be applied here. So just like that, we could think about the inner working systems behind what we are seeing in front of us. So we can just ask a question, what is behind this? And then we could use what we can see on screen. There are some data, so like how many people like this, and what is the title, what is the thumbnail, and what's the data that content was uploaded, and things like that. And we can wonder and we can think about how these data might have used to for this content to be exposed to me. And so that was the basic thinking behind our program we developed. So I hope that this answered your question.
Thank you, Dr. Jeong, for the analogy and clarification. That was very helpful. Some children have experience with YouTube as content creators, and so they might be able to understand that, in part, the idea, the key concept you mentioned, that media is constructed. But for very young children, how would you suggest addressing algorithmic bias with students that are very young, and how young would you start this conversation?
Oh, that's a great question too. And then I don't have the perfect answer for that, and because we were most interested in redesigning the original Belgian game, which aimed for high school students, and really ask them to use the data and make a formula mathematically, and then think about the whole inner working systems of the algorithm. And we wanted to focus not using the mathematical formula, but think about the priorities of the criteria that can be given to the contents. And so how we can categorize this content to recommend them to someone. And so maybe we can think about from there. And I had an opportunity to look at the national curriculum for English language arts in the BC, because I'm interested in also language literacy curriculum. And then I found it quite interesting in the BC curriculum in the English language arts. Children are encouraged to think about their own preferences and what they like and why they like things in certain ways, and if they don't like things, and then why. And so maybe for young children, we could start from there. So we could ask if they saw and if they prefer certain contents on YouTube, and then we could ask why they want to see that and what are their preferences, what kind of thing they like and don't like, and if they come across with content they don't like, or they if they have experienced that like something they like and then that kept coming up. And so we can ask questions about their environment, just like we can ask the other environments, not just digital environments, and their preferences, and then why they are there. That's my not enough answer. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Jeong. I'm really glad that you had a look at our BC curriculum, because it's undergone some changes recently, and namely around First Nations literacy. I'm sure my colleagues from the Language and Literacy Department could say more. It might lead to the next question, which is, this research was performed in Korea. How do you see this translating to Canada? Do you feel there would be similarities or differences?
Yeah, I think because YouTube and many digital platforms, there are some domestic platforms, but also global platforms. And so we can ask similar questions. And of course, in Canada, you can reflect Canadian teenagers and young people's experience and their preferences, so they can revise the activities and the data sets like persona and video cards and things like that. And actually, I had an opportunity back in like 4 years ago. We had an international symposium with UNESCO, and at the time, somebody from Media Smarts in Canada, Ottawa-based media education expert group, he came to speak in a plenary speech, and he actually participated in our workshop. And then after that, I had a look at Media Smart's website, which is great. And I also found there are some not quite similar, but some different, but there are approaches to algorithmic awareness education. And like in 2 weeks' time, there will be Global Media Education Summit held in Vancouver in Simon Fraser University, which I am also participating. And when I looked at the program book, I also found similar interest in raising critical understanding of algorithmic practices for even younger children. So I think the important thing is to start from where our children's experiences are. And so trying to reflect and trying to engage with them, a critical dialogue about their digital environment. I think that will be the starting point, and it's very important point. And then we can definitely revise the materials. Yeah.
Thanks, Dr. Jeong. Sometimes we engage in what I like to call a pedagogy of difference in this country, and it might be as well in Korea, where we highlight our differences early on in early childhood education and so on. My next question that was posted by an audience member seems to tackle some of this, which is, how do we ensure that students are using language that is inclusive and culturally sensitive? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, this is not directly related to what I presented today, but this is definitely huge concerns of parents, teachers, and the society in general. And when because I'm also interested in parental education, and when I had workshops and have talks with parents, their biggest concern was the language, and like language about like sexism and all kinds of discriminations, and quite violent, and not caring languages that are exposed to children and adolescents. And I think just like in our just everyday lives, I think this can be a concern with digital citizenship. And we want to be a good person, just like in our daily lives. We also need to be a good person online. And so I think starting from there, we need to ask and encourage our children and young people to think about the effects and impacts of the languages to other people and to ourselves and our thinking and our identities. So really, I think it's a matter of like literacy and from our social cultural perspectives. I think that's the basic, I think.
Thank you. That piece around reflection on ourselves is so key. And it leads me to the next question regarding a word that you used, and that's right in your talk. There's a bit of a conundrum because you mentioned also that media is constructed and that we and these children contribute to that infrastructure. So it raises a bit of a dilemma as to what are our rights and indeed what role do ethics play in terms of that data infrastructure, and how does your program or your pedagogy discuss that ethical dilemma and the questions around rights to data sovereignty when we contribute or students contribute to that infrastructure?
Yeah, that's a really important question. And in the chapter of the book I wrote with my colleagues, we started that chapter to map out the digital literacy approaches in South Korea. And mostly data literacy and digital literacy in South Korea tend to focus on individual persons' data protection and of themselves and of others, and being nice to other people online. But many media literacy education people have raised the question, who it's not just about individual people as consumers and users of these the digital platforms to who should be ethical about the data and the content we use. But really the responsibility of the big data companies and the government who really have the access to the massive data collection and categorization and things like that. So I think we really need to ask a question about ethics, not just to individual users, but to the business and companies and the regulatory bodies in the government, not just nationally, but also globally. So in that sense, we need to raise our voice as a good citizen in the digital environment.
Dr. Jeong, can you share with us to what extent South Korea collects race-based data? And how is this a part of the conversation in terms of your critical algorithmic literacy program and perhaps persona development among the students who take this program?
It's a quite tricky question. I think it is difficult to say. South Korea is becoming a very multiracial country, but in terms of getting the nationality and things like that, has been quite different from Canadian approach to multiculturalism. So in a way, we respect and we admire you have done to create a multicultural society. I think in that sense, like Canada and Australia have come along really great ways. And I think in like national surveys, when we collect the data about race sometimes, but not necessarily. So in terms of the demographics, we do have the government produced data on race, but I'm not sure how much we are collecting race-based data, to be honest. Yeah. So in the sense, I have to reserve my answers.
Certainly. And our final question in the last 30 seconds, if you might, but certainly feel free to elaborate later on, because we can always put your response as part of the website that we have on the anti-racism series. It's around this key concept you mentioned, which is that media is constructed, and that's a key piece of your program. How might students use this ideology to transform YouTube by creating recommendation algorithms?
Yeah, it's a key question, and I'm not sure if students can change and create YouTube recommendation algorithm, because that's YouTube's decision to make. But I kept emphasizing on the concept of imaginaries. So I think in the educational settings, and as a habit of mind, habit of critical thinking, I think we need to encourage children and also adults to think of different ways our media can be made. And so I think one of the key things that we need to learn in media education is that what we see and what we are being offered right now is not the end, and this is not the ultimate thing. We can have different ways, so we need imaginaries and we need our imagination, and then with that we can in the future we can make different kinds of media, and also right now we can raise our voice as citizens and users and consumers, I think.
Thank you, Dr. Jeong, for your answers to these many questions posed by our audience. I'd like to introduce our next event, which will be Laurie Townshend on anti-Black racism, a podcast. So please look out for that. And to turn it over to Dr. Carrie Ewert for final thanks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Khan and Dr. Jeong. This was an amazing overview of examining what could be done in the classroom and how we move this research into action. And just to go back to our last page, just thinking of ways that we can now take this content that you very graciously shared with us and moving it along in terms of extending your work, discussing your work. Where can we go from here? So we genuinely thank you for your expertise, for your experience, and for sharing this incredible research with us. And we look forward to, as Dr. Khan mentioned, our next speaker, who will be in the form of a podcast. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. We have recorded this and we'll have this up on our Met website. And we wish everyone a wonderful afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you are. And thank you again very much, Dr. Jeong.
Thank
Welcome.
you.